So I welcome you all to Psych 121, and I want to particularly welcome our sociology students that are just joining us on this Zoom lecture platform. You're all welcome to class. You have not missed too much in terms of online lecture, which started just last week. And I want to believe God, by God's grace, you will catch up and you will not miss out, and it will not adversely affect you in any way. For the rest of us, we want to move on. We touched a little bit even on this subject. We are going on into even last semester about the effect of gene on human behavior. But it's very important you understand that psychology is all about the study of the mind and human behavior, the processing of the mind. And in the process, you need to understand the nature of mankind so that you know how those components within the man, including the composition of the cell, because it's inside the cell, you have the nucleus, and inside the nucleus, you have the gene. And you've got to understand that virtually more than a chunk of our behavior, if not everything, actually is determined by the gene. You know, and there's so many things that are actually operated by genes. So that's why it's so important for you to understand the concept of gene, genetic inheritance, and related concepts to be able to properly understand human behavior. So it's on this note we are going to take off. I'm your host, Dayo Odukoya, and I want to welcome you on board again to class today. And we are focusing today on genes and human behavior. We're going to start with the structure of the human cell because that's where you're going to find the gene. You must know the structure, which we call the anatomy, and the function, which we call the physiology of the cell. The anatomy and physiology of the cell. The cell is the smallest living unit of every living organism. In fact, we have some organisms that are single-celled. Examples are amoeba, paramecium, chlamydomonas, euglena, and so on and so forth. These are all unicellular organisms capable, one single cell, capable of independent survival, carrying out almost all the functionalities of living things. That is mystery. One single cell. And we as human beings, we are multicellular. We have millions and trillions and billions of, trillions of cells within our body, and in various forms and sizes and shapes. But it's very important to understand that the information that is making us look like our great-great-grandfather, making us behave like our great-great-grandfather or like our parents, making us look like them, they are actually encapsulated or loaded within the cell. That's why we need to understand the structure of the cell. That information has been, it's like programming, has been programmed into the cell, you know, and it's within the nucleus, which is in fact, that's the living component of the cell. If you remove the nucleus of a cell, that cell is dead. So the nucleus is one that is actually housing the chromosome, and the chromosomes are housing, the chromosomes are housing, as it were, the genes. And of course, every gene is made up of a combination of many DNAs, deoxyribonucleic acid. So you're going to be seeing all those components. So let's just proceed. That is just an overview. So what you're seeing now is the typical structure. You did it in biology, at secondary school level, I'm very sure. Maybe you didn't see this kind of diagram. Maybe they only gave you just a two-dimensional diagram, as it were. But in reality, everything in the body actually, there are three, it's three-dimensional, as it were. And that is why we gave you this three-dimensional picture or diagram here. And so you need that. That's actually what it looks like. This is a highly magnified cell, as it were. And you can see the various components. We can't start going into details of this because I have only 30 minutes, because I'm going to allow the last 10 minutes for your inputs and questions, things that are not clear. So I need to just run through this. So, but I want to encourage you, because we can simply ask you in the exam, draw and label an annotated diagram of the human cell. The moment you hear annotated, this particular style you are seeing answers that question. What is the annotation? You can see below the nucleus, we put a brief description of the function of the nucleus underneath it. That is what makes this diagram annotated. If you don't put the function, if you just label without putting the function, your diagram is not annotated. So when you see the question, draw an annotated diagram of so. That means that by the time you are labeling, you should be putting a brief function, in a brief summary, the function of each component part you label. And that's what you are seeing here. And that's the beauty of this slide. So you need to take your time to study and memorize and internalize the various components of the human cell and their functions. This is very important. It's fundamental in psychology. In fact, this is the basis of psychology because it's the origin of human behavior. That's the origin. That's why you hear about nature-nurture controversy. You know, this is the nature part. The nurturing part is your home training, the way you are brought up, the sermons you hear in the church, like this lecture I'm giving you, that's the nurturing. Nature is what is inside your gene that determines the level of your intelligence, that determines the way your brain is working, determine the level of your perception and how your brain and your cell and your body is working. That's the nature. All of these are determined within the gene, which is inside the cell I'm showing you now. They are all determined there from birth. Your height, your weight, your shape, the shape of your nose, the shape of your face, the configuration of your brain, the capacity of your brain. Some are born with Down syndrome. They're born as imbeciles because there was a malformation in their brain because of some chromosomal, what's called chromosomal aberration during formation of the baby in the womb. Thank God your case is not like that. That is why you should be thanking God every day and praising him that you are fearfully and wonderfully made and you are made perfect. You know, you are not in control of all these things. All these things happen especially during the first trimester when they have pregnancy. Nobody's in control. Your parents are not in control. You are not the one in control. God is the one supervising this. When parents are not submitted to the hand of God, that's why you see witches and wizards and some agents of devil and demons coming to now, interrupt that progress of development and causing congenital malformation. That's why you need to know how to take charge, control spiritually to protect even your baby from the womb. I know we need this. We don't understand the interplay of all this. That's a spiritual world out there. And they're out to, the negative spiritual world, they're how to steal, to kill, and to destroy. You must know how to put them in their stop because they can affect the development of the baby even in the womb and as the baby continues to develop. And so this is not actually a child's play. These are realities of life which you need to incorporate into your learning. And so, but I just want you to know that the genesis of all human behavior begins at that gene level. So it's a combination of the quality of the gene and what the information laid there combined with the environmental stimulus you begin to receive when you are born that will now determine your personality and then the direction of your behavior and then ultimately what you become in life. This is awesome. So you need to understand all this and put them in perspective. So let's proceed because of time. This is the two-dimensional diagram of the same cell, simplified as it were. So we proceed again. We don't need to waste too much time on this. But because our focus is on the gene, I want you to see actually the place of the gene in that configuration of the cell to understand it properly. So if you go back again, let me quickly go back. I just want to show you that the area of focus in all these is, in this particular structure, is this internal, the one and my cursor is going around. That's the nucleus. That's our focus. For this lecture and for this lecture, we are not talking about mitochondria. We're not talking about lysosome. We are not talking about Golgi body. We are not talking about endoplasmic reticulum. We are not talking about all that. They have the various functions, but that is not our focus because we are talking about the gene, and the gene is located within the nucleus. And so is the nucleus. As I'm proceeding now, I'll be going inside the nucleus to now show you where the gene is inside the nucleus. That's where I'm trying to show you now as we proceed. So, and that's what you're seeing here now. We have been able to go. So this is the nucleus. And inside the nucleus, we are seeing we are now bringing out, we have at least 23 chromosomes in every nucleus. Take note of that. One pair, I mean, that's 23 pairs, of course, not 23 chromosomes, but 23 pairs of chromosomes, 23 pairs. So 46 in all. A pair is dedicated to a sex chromosome. The others, we call them autosome. The sex chromosome is the only one that is, I mean, just one pair is dedicated to determining your cells, your sex, your gender, as it were, whether you're going to be male or female. That's just one pair responsible for that. So, but all the others, they determine the other parts of your body, your nose, your brain formation, the shape of your height, your skin color, and all that. They're all determined within the chromosomes, as it were. So that's the chromosome in the middle portion. Just one strand of chromosome brought out there. And then within the chromosome, if you take a part or a chunk of part of the chromosome, that's where you now get a strand of DNA. Now, a segment of DNA together is what constitutes the gene. So you can say the gene is made up of a number of molecules of DNA. The number is not determined. It could be 10, it could be 20, it could be more. But the bottom line is that you have more than one molecule or two molecules of DNA within a gene. And that's the segment you are seeing with that block of arrow to the right here, which I'm showing with my cursor. And I hope you are following that. You can just be noting down your question. You can even put it on the chat forum so that later on, even if I can't address everything within the class, I will harvest them and try to prepare an answer and post it on the Moodle platform for you later on. So feel free to ask questions. It's just that it's not good for you to be interrupting me as I'm talking because of the limited time, as we normally do in a class. But you can still ask those questions and can be rest assured I will respond to them later on the Moodle platform. Now, again, I'm showing again the relationship or progression from the nucleus, which is this, you can see my cursor, to the chromosome. We have 23 pairs of that in every human cell. Then to the DNA strand on which you now have the gene. So a segment of that DNA strand is actually what you call the gene. So that means that you may have a number of genes on a strand of chromosome, as it were. You have many genes. That's what it implies. So, and I hope you are following with that. So that is, again, I'm just giving you different diagrams to show you the different relationships of the protein, of gene. At the end of the day, those genes are actually made up of protein. That's why it's so important that a pregnant woman, especially the fourth trimester, should be eating, good diet containing a lot of protein, because most of these genes and other parts of our body, they are made up of protein. So that's why it's very important. And I even recommend that actually government should be supporting and feeding all pregnant women all over, especially those who are indigent, who cannot afford good meal. They should actually be taking care of them, because it will translate to national development at the end of the day, because the quality of the human beings and brain development will determine the quality of people and quality of development in the nation. So we should be taking time to develop and to take care of our pregnant women, so that they have proper balanced diet, especially those who are poor. One of you can take it up as a project to begin to feed those indigent pregnant women all around you. Yes, you can take it up as a project. Just note it by the side. Maybe you have enough, your parents have enough money, or it's not even about having money, it's about having the heart to care for people. Mama Teresa didn't have any money when he started caring for people around her. And she now became known all over the world for it. So why not? You can take it up as a ministry or a project, because this is what will translate to national development, as it were. Now let's proceed again. So some of the key terms which I've mentioned so far, again, you need to pay attention to. You need to know the concept of chromosome. The larger you start from the cell. Now, all the components or parts within a cell, they will call them organelles. Take note of that. I hope you are jotting by the side, because there are some things I'm saying, you will not see it in the slide. That's the essence of a verbal lecture like this. You capture them and take note of them. That's where you see, good students. Even as I'm talking, I know some people are not even listening to me at all. They are busy chatting. You can see it at the beginning of the lecture. We have to shut them down. And some people are busy doing some other things. They're not even listening. The result will show at the end when you examine at the end of the day. The result will show. So you need to understand the concept of chromosome. Like I said, it's a structure. These are those strands. You have 23 pairs of them within every chromosome. Transferred from one generation, you receive half of them came from your mom, half came from your dad. The combination of them during sexual intercourse and then fertilization will combine to now form your own set of chromosomes. You receive half from your mom, you receive half from your dad. That combination, and you're going to pass again to the next generation, half of your own to your son, and then your husband will pass another half, and that's how it continues. It's part of the wisdom of God for survival of the fittest. And so you have, and it's actually the DNA at the bottom, like the DNA is made up of proteins, as it were. Their configuration of their chemical composition, compounds compounded together to form DNA. Now the DNA is a unit of heredity that carries information from one generation to the other. And a segment of DNA or RNA is transmitted from one, like I said, from one generation to the other. And they carry genetic information and in form of sequence of amino acids. That's actually the basic composition of proteins. You have done that again when you were in secondary school. It's the combination of those amino acids that actually form those DNA, and then the DNA combine together to form the gene, and then the gene combine together to form the chromosome. And then the chromosomes are within the nucleus. You get the picture now. And then that is transmitted from one generation to another, transmitting information about the parents to the children. And that is what forms resemblance and then determine intelligence, personal, and a lot of other things in the human body. Like I said before, autosomes represent chromosomes that are not sex hormones. So you have 22 of them in every human being. One is actually the sex hormone. So those are the general information. And then I've already explained this part. I think we can just keep this. And all animals have the same number of chromosomes which transmit genetic information. And I've just mentioned that already, 46 in all or 23 pairs. Now, but I wanted to understand what the concept of chromosomal abnormalities or chromosomal aberration. A typical example is Down syndrome. There are so many kinds of these syndromes actually, and it's as a result of malformation of the gene or chromosomes during the fetal development. And so many factors can be responsible for that. Stress, alcohol consumption, wrong drug consumption during pregnancy, not sleeping well, and so many other factors can actually be responsible for those chromosomal genetic, inheritance of negative traits, and so many other factors can actually be responsible for that. But the good news I have for you, with God, all things are possible. When you put your faith in God, all these abnormalities can be corrected even before the formation of the baby in the womb. And in case even baby is formed, I've heard of the case of a Down syndrome young girl at the age of 18, totally cured by giving her life to Christ. I need to chip in that because I want you to have a balanced picture that nothing is impossible with our God. This is Covenant University, and we are permitted to talk about this. We need to give you the whole picture, so I don't have a lopsided view about what is going on. Now, talking more about chromosomes, I've already explained that you have 23 chromosomes that are for general character and trait, while one is dedicated to this sex chromosome, as it were. And that sex chromosome is either XX, and that's the symbol normally used for the sex chromosome. XS, which represent, anytime you see X, is representing the female chromosome, while the Y is representing the male chromosome, and which actually is representing the one, and it's located within spermatozoa. Then, but male usually have a combination of X and Y, while female have a combination of two X's, that is X, X, X in two places. And that is what you are seeing here. That is where you have male. And so when, I don't want to go into this because we're supposed to discuss this more under reproduction, because it's going to take all my time if I want to start explaining how the sex is determined. Because if I go into that, it will take our time and it will rob us of the time. So I don't want to go into that at this time. So let me just quickly proceed. But just understand the fact that the symbol, what actually determines the female child, so to speak, is when you have two X chromosomes together. But when you have a male child, when you have X and Y chromosome combined together. Now, because our focus is on the gene, it's important that you understand that it is gene that ultimately determine human character and expressions. Like I've said it, but it's good to repeat it. Color of the skin, your height, you are not in control of these things. They are genetically determined, programmed, and of course, picked from your parents. So in some cases, it could be because your dad is very tall and your mom is very short. Some among your siblings will be very tall like your dad. Some will be short. But we have seen cases where both parents are short and they still have very tall children. What could be the explanation for that? I wish I can allow you to talk. I wish in the class, maybe at the end, somebody can tell me that. That may be because some of your grandparents are very tall and your parents happen to be carriers of that gene, the gene for tallness, which is not expressed in them. And then your mom too has a gene for tallness, which was not expressed in her. So by the time they now come together, if the two genes for tallness now come together, that's why a child will not end up being tall, even though the two parents are not tall. You know, this is just a simple example of Mendelian inheritance, principle. the principle of genetics, which you need to understand. So you need to begin to understand these dimensions. It's a mystery and it's very wonderful, including the size of your breast, the size of your hips, whether you have mustache or not, and so on and so forth. All these are determined genetically. For instance, I wish I have a lot of mustache, but somehow I just don't have it. Somehow I didn't inherit it. You see some other youngsters, 16-year-old, 14-year-old, and they're full of mustache. It's what you inherit. You can't change that. Although some people try to use some chemicals and some drugs, you end up just destroying yourself if you go that way. Just accept the way God has made you and celebrate it and just be contented with what you have. And stop trying to be like another person. Glory to God. So these are basic things you need to understand. What you can change, learn to adapt and adjust to it and make the best of it. That's the best way to live. Not trying to be like another person. Because there are some things you can just change, but you can make the best of it. You can refine it. You can make it better, not trying to be like another person. Now, genes are internally expressed, and take note of these two terminologies, genotypes and phenotypes. Now, because we may ask you to explain these concepts, the genes are expressed internally as genotypes, and that's where we use the symbols. Every gene is usually represented by two genotypes. You have the, I'm going to express that later on. You have the dominant gene and you have the recessive gene. So every gene, every character is actually represented by two genes. The dominant gene, you can have two dominant genes, you can have two recessive genes. The dominant gene is what we call the one that is expressing itself outwardly. Now, what you see outwardly, like somebody being tall, now that is the phenotype of the gene that was, and if you go and check it, that person is likely to have two dominant genes. That's why you see the gene now being expressed, the person now coming out to be very tall. And so if you see somebody very short, it could be because the person inherited two recessive genes for tallness. And we have a way we represent them, and we're going to see that very soon. So just understand that the concept of genotype and the concept of phenotype. Now, genotypic maps, and I want to share with you a quick theory by Mendel. These are things you have done in biology at O level. They're still taking it in biology department. I don't know whether when you went to our psychology department, our psychology students, I'm sure you did some introductory course in biology, maybe last semester. I don't know, but I'm sure you must have been taken through the concept, the cell. And you are familiar with all these things I'm saying. But for the sake of our sociology students and those from economics department or other departments who have not taken anything on biology, introduction to biology recently, I need to go through over this again so that your memory can be refreshed. And I want you to be linking this with behavior. You need to link all this with human behavior because it's very important. You can now see, and don't forget the concept of nature-nurture controversy. There's still the controversy, which one is determining human behavior more? Is it the genes, the type of genes you inherited from your parents, or the environmental influence? It has been a subject of controversy for many decades and years. I don't know your stand, but it's a good food for thought, and we are still researching it. So Mendel's theory. Now, see the Mendel theory expressed here. This is the simple Mendel theory for the first filial generation. Simple Mendel theory, where you have a father that is affected and a mother, and one parent is affected and the mother is not affected. And that is why because it's a carrier, that's why you have affected, you have the capital letter, we use capital letter for dominant gene, while we use a small letter for recessive gene. Use small letter for recessive gene. And so these are some diseases that could be expressed in this form to the right side. You could have autoimmune disease, lactose intolerance, Marfan syndrome, myotonics, dystrophy, and so on and so forth. All these could be expressed in this form, in this genotypic expression or layout we have given you. All of them can be actually expressed in this form. So the father can be a carrier, and while maybe the mother actually is suffering that particular ailment. So when you see one dominant gene and one recessive gene, that person is just a carrier. That particular ailment, we have only 10 minutes left. What are we going to do? And I don't want to come back to this lecture again, and it's still lengthy. We are almost just halfway. So we see what we can do. I will try to round up because I need to allow you to ask questions. But basically understand this procedure now. So when you have this situation where you have a carrier and then somebody who is actually expressing or expressing fully that particular ailment, then you discover that in the first filial generation, like this, two of the children, it's going to be 25% as it were. You have the first case here, 25% of the sons will be affected, 25% of the female will be normal daughters, and then 25% will be affected, and then 25% will be normal sons, as it were. That is actually the way it's been expressed there. You know, in this particular case, the DD is representing normal. They are using it for normal case, not in the way I was saying it before. Whereas the capital D is representing somebody who is affected for that particular ailment. This is one way to express it, but you can use another format actually apart from this. But in this particular diagram I'm showing to you now, the D actually is representing the person who is having, that D is the dominant gene, expressing which is showing the presence of any of these diseases on the right side here. And when you see small d, the person is not having those ailments. That's what it means in this case. But this is not a typical or normal way of expressing the genotype. We're going to see as we proceed. Let me move on from there. This is another case here using the same structure. And these are the kind of diseases that could be expressed through this. Again, because of time, I want to skip it. I want to go forward to see if I can have a better expression. Okay, I like this one.
Hello, sir.
Yes, you want to say something?
Sir, I can't hear you clearly.
Maybe it's your network. Oh. I hope the others can hear me. Maybe it's your network. Okay, you can pause. But I will soon round off now, quickly. Maybe you just move your laptop to a place or to a place where the network will be better. Now,
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Now, I want to use the sex-linked recessive inheritance. You know, there's so many of those Hunter syndrome. There is a particular one where the blood will not clot. What's the name of that particular syndrome again? I think one of the Queen of England have in their lineage, they have some people having that particular ailment, that when they have any accident and blood is gushing out, they find it difficult for their blood to clot. When I remember the name for that particular ailment, I will share with you later on. It's one, and it's sex-linked. It's always expressing such disease is expressing itself in male, not in female. And that is the kind of thing we are talking about here. And so it's expressed with
hemophilia.
Yes, I think that hemophilia, you are very correct. That is it. So it's linked, that it's expressed, it's an example of what I'm showing you now. So, and it's always carried, but this particular example they are showing here, they are actually showing us that this one must be related with the female. You know, let me see now. Affected, male affected, sons affected. Yes, it's the son that is affected. It expresses itself more in the male, even though when a female carries it, it will not be expressed. It will not in the phenotypic level. But when a male carries it, like you are seeing this guy now, no, see, even though this female is having the same chromosome with R, but it's not expressed. It's just the lady is just a carrier. But the moment it comes into a male, that male will be affected and will begin to express that particular ailment. That's the example you are seeing here. And all these, they are normal, they're normal, they're normal. It's only this one. So this comes as ratio 3:1. And this is the typical Mendel genotypic expression for the first filial generation. And I'd like you to take note of this more. I'm going to pause here because we have actually been able to go through the procedure of how the gene can affect behavior. So you can see now, when you now see a member of your family having an ailment, you need to pity them because they did not determine the condition. It was part of genetic expression. You see somebody behaving in a particular way, try to understand, is that particular ailment, somebody having epilepsy, somebody having this ailment? It could be because the person just inherited that component. For instance, in my family, there was this sickle cell, and out of almost 10 of us, only 6 of us survived. And about 5 died of sickle cell. That's why before you begin to say I'm in love, check the genotype of the blood genotype of your partner. No matter how much you are in love, just be concerned for your children and see how you can help out and correct that situation. Or maybe you change your partner for the sake of your children. Don't say because you're in love. And then except you can stretch out your faith, because I know God can change your blood group. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pause and allow you to ask questions, because we just have about 3 minutes or 4 minutes left. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Sir, good day, sir.
Good day.